After a periodic review, the first thing that happens is the responsible officer of the QI gives a huge sigh of relief because they've just gone through a really large amount of work to get a document that enables them to do the next step. The governance cycle of the QI agreement contains control mechanisms, oversight mechanisms, and enforcement mechanisms. The enforcement mechanisms are easy because that's just penalising a QI for doing the wrong thing, but hopefully you never get to that stage. The control mechanism is the appointment of the responsible officer and the requirement to have a compliance program. The oversight is the periodic review and the certification components. Now let's assume you've had your periodic review, someone's come in, they've checked a certain number of accounts, they've given you the factual information in their review report. So now you're going to make a certification to the IRS. One of two things is going to happen. If you had a clean report from your periodic reviewer, you're going to go to the IRS website, to the QAMS website, and you're going to make a certification. What you're doing is you're making a certification of effective controls and providing the factual information that you got from the reviewer. Now, all of that factual information is identified in the appendix to the QI agreement, so you don't need to worry about which bits of information to give and which not. It's already specified in the QI agreement. So you're going to give factual information, you're going to give a clean certification of effective controls. After that's happened, your QI portal, the website that you use to manage your QI compliance, will show that you have made your certification. And in my last video, I talked about the deadlines for those certifications. So in your certification period, the blocks of 3 years, if you chose year 1 or year 2 for your review, then your certification is going to be due in July of the following year. If you chose year 3, then your certification won't be due until December the 31st. So you've got an extra 6 months. If your periodic review identified material failures or events of default, then those have to be reported. In fact, it doesn't matter whether you've spotted those failures before the periodic review or not. All material failures, all events of default must be reported to the IRS. The key question here is, did you spot the material failure or the event of default before the reviewer did? If you did, and you fixed the problem, so you had some people who were badly trained, who didn't understand, let's say, how to validate a W8 properly, and you spotted that problem and you fixed it. You gave them some more training, you checked that it was good training, and you saw the result was properly validated W8s. So you saw a problem, you fixed the problem, it was a material failure or an event of default, but you fixed it. What that does is it proves that you have effective internal controls. So the IRS is not saying, don't tell us if you had a problem. They want to know, if you have a problem, you need to tell us about it, even if you fixed it. The issue of a qualified certification is when you didn't spot the problem. The only person who spotted it was the reviewer when they were reviewing your accounts. What that says is you didn't really have effective controls in place, because if you did, you would have spotted this problem and fixed it. But you didn't, and it was the reviewer that spotted it for you. What that means is you have to give a qualified certification. Qualified certification is essentially going mea culpa, I made mistakes and I didn't spot them, and the reviewer has spotted them. What the IRS wants from you in that circumstance is, well, hang on a second, you're the responsible officer. We need an attestation from you in writing that you will fix these problems. Not only that, we want to know how and when you're going to fix those problems. So we would like to see a remediation plan. That's how you're going to fix it and when are you going to fix it. The one thing not to do in a qualified certification is say, we'll fix it over the next 12 to 24 months, for example, because we're really busy. That's not going to go down well at the IRS. Generally speaking, we would be recommending if you found problems like that, you should fix them within 6 months. Now, what's going to happen is the IRS is going to look at that remediation plan and the attestation, and they're going to decide, are they going to accept that remediation plan? Now, they either are or they aren't. If they accept the remediation plan, they may not even tell you. So your assumption has to be, unless you hear otherwise, assume your remediation plan is accepted and get on with it and fix the problems. If the IRS is not happy with your remediation plan, they will write to you and say, hang on a second, we don't necessarily think this is a good enough remediation plan. How are you going to deal with these other points that we've just raised? And now you're into a negotiation with the IRS, which is, well, we want to do it this way and you wanted to do it the other way. Now you've got to get into a negotiation with them to agree how these issues are going to be fixed and when. So they have the ability to monitor how you are meeting the terms of your QI agreement. The other thing to recognize here is, if you're making the certification based on the periodic review report, they may want to talk to the reviewer. And as part of the QI agreement that very clearly says, you are not allowed to engage a reviewer and prevent them from talking to the IRS. So the IRS reserves the right to be able to contact the reviewer to ask them questions about how they conducted the review. Now, they're not trying to figure out whether the reviewer is competent or not. They're essentially trying to find out whether the reviewer had any concerns that they made to you which may not have made it into your qualified certification. So that scenario goes on, and ultimately you will have made your certification and the process continues until you fixed all the problems, and by then you're probably about to have your second periodic review following your second certification period.